Hi guys, welcome to CISO Talks episode 5. Today we're going to be talking about CISOs and the relationship that CISOs have with vendors. I'm really just trying to debate as to whether we think that relationship's broken, what vendors can do differently and better to engage better with CISOs in general. So I hope you enjoy it. Don't forget to subscribe, click on the bell icon. Thanks very much, let's go.
Vendor and CISO relationships at the moment, the status quo, Aidan, is it right? Is it working?
No.
Why not?
It's completely wrong. No, I mean, I think that the whole dynamic of the relationship is broken from the outset. I mean, I think that one of the big problems is the agendas of CISO and the agendas of vendors, or at least the people that engage with the CISO from the vendors, is just wrong. The CISO has some very specific objectives about keeping their organisation secure. Makes sense. And the agenda, quite often, of the people that engage with the CISO from the vendor is, how can I get a deal? How can I close the sale? Yeah, how can I close the sale? And that from the outset means that how is that a good foundation for a working relationship? It isn't.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Vendors need to start engaging with CISOs. Needs to dramatically change.
Right. Okay. But how do you mean change? What? Take more of a problem-solving approach, or become their friend more, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I don't think it's realistic to say that every vendor that a CISO will engage with will want to be a partner. I don't think it's realistic to say that they should be a partner, but I do think that the dynamic of the relationship between the CISO and the vendor needs to become more of a partnership. It needs to be, there needs to be more of a relationship where the pain is jointly owned. It needs to be deeper understanding on behalf of the vendors that understands the needs of the CISOs, and I think that's probably the first step, is just to make sure that the CISO thoroughly believes that the vendor understands their pain, cares about their pain, and that's a really good thing for vendors as well. Is really helps feed back to the vendors in exactly what it is that they need to do next, because the pains of that CISO probably not unique. They're probably shared by many other CISOs. So it's a good thing for the vendor, but that dynamic really has to change, and I think that it's the way in which vendors engage that probably needs to change as well.
Yeah. But you've got to agree though, starting a partnership or any sort of relationship takes time and effort. It must be quite tough for a CISO to sort of work out where to spend their time with particular vendors. Do you actually really want to get close to this vendor or not? There's got to be a way which they can quickly
And how
decide.
do they cut through the noise, and who do they trust?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. How can they qualify which ones are worth spending the time with, which ones aren't? It must be quite tough, because let's face it, they get, 14 calls a day probably?
Absolutely. And I know myself, being a CEO, just how many calls a day you get, people trying to sell you their goods.
Sure.
And how do you figure out what is important to the business and what isn't important to the business, and who's telling you the truth and who's just trying to sell you something? I mean, how do you cut through it all? So I know quite a lot of CISOs tend to turn to analysts, but I don't really think that that's the right approach either, because let's face it, analysts aren't objective. They are... No, not at all. No, I mean, we know this from experience, right? When, we've got a really strong solution, but when you're trying to get exposure with some of these analysts like Gartner or Forrester, unless you're prepared to part with cash, they're not going to include you in their research. And yet, it doesn't matter how good your tech is, how innovative it is, how big the problem it solves. Ultimately, if you don't put the money in, it's a pay-to-play model. So, analysts such as Gartner and Forrester absolutely have their place. They do, and they provide really valuable research, but they should definitely not be a primary source for a CISO to make vendor selection, or a CISO to figure out what's actually going to happen next.
I'm concerned though that is the case, that CISOs sometimes do look to Forrester and Gartner as the de facto,
and it has
Oracle.
To be one source of many, right? I mean, and it's really difficult to stay on top of what it is that really is compelling, what it is that really is causing risk, because let's face it, I mean, there's a huge amount of noise out there. There's a huge amount of, I mean, they've been bombarded every day with every vendor trying to send them the next white paper, trying to sell them the next silver bullet, trying to tell them how their solution is going to fix everything. How do they cut through the noise? So I think that analysts will definitely have a part to play. My only objection is I don't think that should play as big of a role as it sometimes does in selecting a vendor to keep the information secure. I just don't think it necessarily is the right thing to do.
No. I think it does offer some comfort to CISOs to, before they begin this early stage partnership with a vendor, that the vendor has been mentioned in a recognised organisation such as Gartner or Forrester. And that then gives them the confidence that should they decide to proceed with that vendor, it legitimises it. As opposed to a situation where a CISO is engaging with a vendor which has not been mentioned or publicised in such a way. They really are setting the market, if you like, or they really are taking a gamble on an untested source, even though it might be the right one, because it's untested or it's not.
It's the kind of adage where you won't get fired for buying IBM. So
exactly
it's the same kind of thing with, I guess, with the analysts. Look, they've been referenced and recognised by Gartner as a player in this field, and I do understand that. But I still think that there's some really, really cool, innovative tech out there that if you just use analysts, you're going to miss.
Sure.
And frankly, also, quite a lot of the vendors that appear in these Gartner reports, you're going to pay through the nose as well, because they're going to be, perhaps a bit more mature as well. And I think there's much better options, not in all cases, but quite a lot of options are out there that just because they haven't been mentioned in Gartner doesn't mean they're not good.
Gotcha.
I think that's the point I'm trying to make. It's not the be-all and end-all. It's one source in which a CISO should use. I mean, I think also the role of channel partners in general is a really good thing to do. Again, they're not unbiased either. They all have made vendor selections. They've got partnerships and alliances with specific vendors. But it's another source that I think CISOs could probably utilise more to try and figure out what else is happening in the market as well.
Yeah, for my mind, value-added resellers, that's their purpose, is to be that partnership with a...
As long as they're consultative as well.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And we all know partners that perhaps aren't very consultative and box shifters, as we use the term in our industry.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I get it. So, so we've discussed that, partners and relationships. Do you think there's anything more vendors can do with CISOs to make sure that when that one-time purchase is over, it's not a one-night stand, if you like?
Yeah.
For example, just to draw a simile with perhaps buying a burglar alarm for your house, you may research a number of security companies to come and install your burglar alarm, and once it's fitted, great, off they go.
Yeah.
If you then get burgled...
It's not their problem.
It's not their problem, right? So do you think that really we should have a bit more of a long-term approach with vendors and CISOs, that in the event of a data breach, having bought our product or anyone's product, that there is something there that offers a bit of the burden shared, or that you're still in touch in a way which is meaningful?
Yeah, and it's a good analogy. Yeah? I mean, I think it's difficult though for one vendor to accept responsibility, because it might have been some other gap in some other part of their security which created the breach. But I definitely, as I was sort of saying earlier, I think that the relationship between this vendor, between the vendor and the CISO, absolutely needs to become more of a partnership. The vendor needs to appear like they're an extension of the security team for that CISO, and the relationship needs, in some circumstances, needs to be like that. Otherwise, it's going to fail, or at least the overall objective, which is keeping the information, keeping the data secure, keeping the organisation secure, that will fail if vendors don't start taking more of that responsibility as well. But I do think it's difficult to necessarily hold the vendor accountable for a data breach within an organisation, because it could be down to a whole range of other things that don't involve the tech, like policy or whatever else it might be. So it's not just about the vendor selection that dictates whether you're secure or not. Of course,
no, of
right?
course, that makes sense.
No.
Yeah. I think also we've discussed this as well with certainly in this early stage relationship with a vendor and a CISO, for example. A vendor can often make casting assumptions of the CISO and their security team and the organisation, and say almost be quite preachy and saying, no, this is what you need to be doing. Your security team don't know what they're doing. This is where you need to be spending your time and efforts, and that's sometimes quite offensive to CISOs. Would you agree that's a problem?
I think there's a few points there. I think one of the things is when we talk about we talk about CISOs a lot, but it varies massively depending on organisation to organisation as to where you are, what sector you're in, how large you are, what country you're in. So I think that sometimes there are assumptions made about what it is to be a CISO. Like in some enterprises, a CISO will do, they'll be sort of busy, sort of more on the technical side than on the strategy side. Whereas in some, we got some CISOs that would not get involved at all in vendor selection. So I think it really varies, and we mentioned this the other week where, in some countries, CISOs get a huge amount of respect and time for the board, and in other countries, in other regions, other sectors, it's just not the case. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's quite assumptuous to be able to just use this term CISO and say all CISOs are the same, because that is not the case at all.
Some are more technical than the others.
Some more technical than others. And there's just so many variables that dictate what it is to be a CISO that I think that we need to be careful as vendors that we don't jump to conclusions and make assumptions that that's what it is. And then the second thing about, your security team don't know what they're doing. I think that, again, you can't make assumptions about that either, because I think that it will really vary. Every single security team, in terms of the types of threats they're being faced, will vary from organisation to organisation. The variables, again, are too big to be able to make any assumptions as to whether a security team is being effective or being not effective.
Of course, yeah, it makes sense.
We've got to make sure that as security vendors that we are spending more time to help that CISO understand the value, understand the pains and the problems that the solutions actually fix. Vendors try and make CISOs make that gap between, well, here's what our product does, and they have to then make that leap between, well, what does the product do against the problems that I've actually got? So I think that one of the things that vendors can really do that would help improve the dynamics, that would improve their engagement with CISOs, is say, and here's the value, here's what it will actually do for your business, for your organisation, once you've got it installed and deployed as well.
Gotcha.
I think that, but if vendors could do that better, I think that would really help as well.
With you.
Yeah.
So don't want to know about the umbrella. They want to know.
They don't want to know about
them getting wet.
Exactly.
With you.
They don't care about the umbrella. They just want to know, how is this going to stop me getting wet?
Well, thanks, guys, for joining us on our episode number 5 of CISO Talks. We've really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you have too.
Thank you.
Please remember to hit subscribe, hit the bell icon as well to stay up to date with our regular updates and podcasts. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Thank you.